Hey everyone, I'm Malicious Gamer, and welcome back to Malicious Fallen. This is going to be another backstory episode where we're covering the second story backstory. The Rebirth storyline, so... let's see. This is going to cover the prophets that visited the four war-mongering kings, and find out what transpired between them. Chapter 1, The Iron King. Or so this vigilant night was called. Since the fall of the Mad Queen, the Iron King was left to defend the land, donning exo-armor, a relic of the Golden Age. It was not a name that he fancied, for to the Iron King, the only person deserving of a royal appellation was Queen Ashley, whom he had long ago served. A king himself? Nonsense. Queen Ashley was his only lord, even in death, and her spectre always weighed heavy on his mind. The knight longed for his Queen Ashley, and resented the blue-haired thing that had struck her down, and the prophets who had masterminded it. The knight lived only for revenge and to carry on the Queen's will. So it was that the shadow of the Iron King was a silhouette of the Mad Queen. His quarters were plain, unbefitting of a king. The Iron King posed with his weapon, remained in silence. His mind never left the battlefield. He was not like most kings, for most kings were not knights that had served countless battles. "Who are you?" the Iron King spoke into the nothingness. Surrounded only by the serenity of darkness, his voice resounded in the emptiness, trailing off into silence. But the Iron King was certain of something, and peered quietly into the darkness, as if the black itself were sentient. "Impressive, my Iron King." The voice came from within the dark. The blackness cascaded into a figure, but the Iron King did not blanch at the bizarre phenomenon. He only peered in silence. "I ask again, who are you?" "We are sometimes called prophets." The prophet spoke. Then there was a blinding slash. The prophet winced not, as his form was sliced into halves. He receded into the darkness whence he came. The Iron King was not surprised, and only stood there. He did, however, realize that his attack was ineffectual. "What business have you with me?" The Iron King spoke into the darkness as the prophet disappeared. He was not ready to talk. The prophet responded in kind, and did not hide within the darkness, but made his form visible a second time. Terribly uncivil for a king. The derisive words questioned his very stature, yet the Iron King, unperturbed, gave no response. "No matter. I did not come to quabble over trifle matters." "Then what did you come for?" "I came to deliver a warning, my Iron King. If these conflagrations continue..." I think that's a term for a conflict. "This land will once again be destroyed by the Malicious." It was a threat to his kingdom, the land that his queen had cherished so, but the Iron King remains calm. He only had questions for his visitor. "What form will the Malicious take? You saw it before, did you not?" "A defect monstrosity with a golden crown." "Yes, that beast." As the king spoke, his body shuddered slightly. "Yes, the beast which struck fear within you. So now, my Iron King, stop this warring, lest that thing awaken yet again." A horrible memory flashed before him. It was from his days as a knight. A creature that struck open the very skies. It overwhelmed the king with his greatness, such that the knight could only kneel in supplication. knowing that he was far outmatched. It was the first and only time the knight had failed. He had lost his very will to fight. The Malicious that you saw was born from the tyranny of the Mad Queen, whose power we had granted. The prophet spoke of the times before the Mad Queen was born. The land's history was tainted, overrun by war, until a light was shed upon it by Queen Ashley's heroic deeds. But tales of heroism never end well, for in the end, heroes abuse their power and use it as the means to achieve petty, selfish ends. This heroine had put down the worst threat her land had faced, only to become the next threat itself, and thus the Mad Queen was destroyed. Then the death of Queen Ashley was our doing? Why take her? Victory would have been hers again. We could not rely on optimism or fragile hopes, not then and not now. To destroy the Malicious, we had to destroy the Queen, and so we did. Nothing more, nothing less. Otherwise, how could we bring stability to the world of men? The king held up his armaments in silence, but this time his frame was emboldened by hatred and rupture. The Iron King was serene no longer. His face betrayed a black, spiraling vengeance, the rapture of bloodlust. Rage with focus. The king, the once knight, was transformed into an engine of pure revenge. The Iron King swept mightily, cutting his foe apart, but the prophet merely faded into darkness. Gradually, they had little more to say to this foreign knight. My Iron King, you have been warned. Now you must choose the fate of your land. But dare you not forget that the fighting does not cease, and the enmity grows. We will create a vessel that will destroy you, as we did the Mad Queen of yore. I could not ask for more. I've long wished for the chance to avenge my queen, and I am prepared to sacrifice all that I have. Then you wish to inherit the will of the Mad Queen, who pushed this world to the brink of destruction. A knight carries out the will of his lord, and a knight fights for the honor of his queen. What may come of the world, I care not. Yes, perhaps this is your human side. I will not dispute your choices, but you will end up as your fair queen did. And with those words, the prophet dissipated, and the room fell silent once more. Then from within the silence the king laughed madly. The laugh echoed within the chamber, and at this moment the Iron King, a leader adored by people across the land, was dead, and from his ashes was born a vengeful demon, a great beast blackened by the searing fires of wrath. The Iron King, driven by his misguided rage, launched hostile campaigns as if to challenge the prophets, to tease them out, to lure their spirit vessel, to avenge the Mad Queen, to whom he had sworn allegiance, knowing full well that it would lead to his own demise. Chapter 2. The Ravenous King, or so the leader of the Eastern barbarians was known. What a savage king he was. His politics were brutish. Conquer, expand, conquer some more. But his territorial ambitions did not benefit his people. He waged war only to satisfy his personal lust. His campaign against Saintville was a selfish obsession, the ancient contract an excuse for expansion. To the ravenous king, subjects were disposable. Those who did not serve well were quickly discarded, even if they had close ties to the king. The people lived in fear. Bowing down to their master, they believed that he was more than human, that his purity was precisely what made him mad. The barbarians' front-line camp was on a desert hill, with a panoramic view of Saintville. But on this day, chaos had fallen upon the base. The roars of an evil beast echoed throughout. Victims cried out in agony as they were mutilated, while onlookers fled and begged for mercy. One person was snapped in two by its pincers, while another was crushed by its tail. Misspelling. And these were the lucky ones, for at least they died swiftly. Dear Lord, why? Soldiers wreathed upon the ground in agony, begging their king for their lives. They were all here under the king's orders, subjects conscripted into the royal army. Their ligaments had been cut by the king's royal guards, and the soldiers were now being presented to the king. The ceremony indicated a death sentence for all of them. They were desperate, begging for mercy, knowing that they would not receive any. If you cannot follow my orders, I have no use for you. But you may serve me one last time. Give me one final thrill. As if on cue, a terrible beast reared its head. It was their executioner. Eat up. The beast began to ravenously feed upon the soldiers. The soldiers attempted to flee, but with their ligaments cut, they could not even stand. The soldiers were devoured one after another. They wailed in terror, screaming with resentment. The beast's mouth and hide turned a bright crimson. Blood drained upon the dry desert, painting the sands red. The desert sands were colored by the blood of 1,000 men, as the great beast devoured them, to the delight of the king. The terrible screams never stopped, and what was once human became unrecognizable flesh. The sight was hell on earth, but the ravenous king, mastermind of the mad feast, took one look at it all and let out a terrible sigh. He was disappointed. How very dull. Your self-indulgence lives up to your name, ravenous king. A man spoke, and the great creature roared. A hooded man stood before them. One of the soldiers scrambled to hide behind him. The creature faced the man in a pose of intimidation. The beast roared and stomped at the man, but would not imitate an encounter. Initiate an encounter. As if the creature was wary of being outmatched. May I ask you one thing, ravenous king? The man feared not the king, and disregarded the bloody horrors as he stood among. He spoke with deep calm when addressing the king. Such a sight the ravenous king had never seen. And it was that day that the ravenous king smiled as he never had before. Speak. Do you savor conflict so that you would torture your own people? The cloaked man looked about at the massacre, but his eyes showed neither pity nor compassion, only an impassive curiosity. It was merely an inquiry. I do what I want, nothing more. Then the ravenous king glanced at the mutilated body of a former subject. His smile broadened. Appreciation for the poor soul's deathly performance. War to satisfy your desires, with no consideration of your people. But of course, for there is no limit to my desires. A king whose purity was precisely what made him mad. Such was the ravenous king. The man let out some sort of sigh at the king's answer. I offer you a warning. If you continue to pillage for your own desires, we will create a vessel and destroy you. So you'll take this vessel of yours and use it to try and stop me? In a manner of speaking, yes. Because, my dear ravenous king, what you have done is... Good indeed. You are not afraid, and you will destroy me. Stupendous! Speaking over the man's words, the king laughed heartily, displaying the purest, maddest smile a man could ever have. He brushed aside all fear of death, for he was overcome with joy, rapturous at another chance to pursue his desires. Rapturous. Then you've no mind to change your ways. Of course not. I am who I am, and I do what I want. Yes, for your desires. Very kingly of you, in a very classic sense. Fascinating, really. And then the man who had shown no emotion hinted at a smile. The smile marked the beginning of a new tale. A cursed bell toll that marked a new age of massacre. Before you leave, I shall ask you a question. What are you called? If you desire a name, you may call me a prophet. Then the man's image began to fade, and he melted into the backdrop, disappearing from sight. He was more shadow than man. Stupendous. Absolutely stupendous. As he spoke, the king swung his sword, as his men drew their final breaths upon the ground. The moans of the living were extinguished, and silence fell upon the camp. Except for the king's great, bellowing laughter, it would be a new era of unparalleled strife. Chapter 3. The Twin Queens. Their venerable dynasty had a long history, and their land was the largest on the continent. The twin sisters ruled in an extraordinary fashion. The two queens together served as one ruler. They believed that their role as noble women, indeed their heavenly mandate, was to bring an end to war and conflict, and bring peace to the continent. To this end, the queens employed all manner of policies, perhaps most famously their practice of accepting the people of conquered lands as rightful subjects to the motherland. Their reputation among nearby lands was no less than splendid, and the two queens were heroines to their people. But that was not the entire story. They showed mercy and compassion for those who obeyed them, but were brutally merciless toward those who did not, regardless of rank, gender, or race. The justification: nobles should rule over a world that is united, stable. The queens were at their personal mansion, constructed for them, in a nearby land they had seized, but the queens were under siege. The clashing of steel echoed within the walls. A mob of bandits attacked the twin queens, dressed as they were in their nightgowns. Two against many, but the queens stayed perfectly calm. They sighed as they deflected the blades of their foes. Dear sister, we've no other choice. A pity for these poor dresses. Then the twin queens went on the offensive. The bandits were helpless, and fell in quick succession. Two against many, but it was a massacre. Each bandit soon drew his final breath, and the mansion fell silent. The blood of these scoundrels has ruined our clothes. We'll see the entire guard detail and their clans executed tomorrow. They should never have put us in danger. Their attire was stained crimson red. Parts and pieces of men lay strewed about, making a mess of the queen's mansion. Yes, delightful, but first... Yes, dear sister? Each twin reached around the back of the other to undo the clasp of their blood-drenched dresses. Suddenly the elder twin threw a dagger into the far darkness. The younger twin leaped in the same direction, slashing her sword. Such coordination was the signature of the queens. No man could survive such blinding speed and accuracy, but what they faced was no man. The sword had swung true, the dagger thrown like lightning, but both had missed their mark, for there was no target to be struck. Strange, for they had sensed something, and found nothing. But the twin queens were not alarmed. They only stayed calm and alert, scanning their surroundings. They saw nothing, but did not doubt their sixth sense. Well, you don't miss much at all. True queens you two be. The darkness itself began to pulsate. then Kolsek into human form, affirming their suspicions. You earn our respect, Twin Queens, as you are called. You are a paragon of harmony. What business have you? Please, put these on first. The man from out of nowhere produced 2 magnificent new dresses and handed them to the queens, but they were leery of his offer and did not accept. I wish to speak of grave matters with you, and I ask that you face me as ambassadors. What would we speak of with blood and entrails upon you? You have a point. Very well, we accept your kind offer of attire. They accepted and changed into their new dresses. The proper attire had the intended effect, and the twins felt like queens again. May we proceed, Twin Queens? You may. The queen stood proud and regal. Their mere presence was stunning, enough to silence babies and wither mighty men. These were the twins that inspired fear and respect in the hearts of their people. They stood as if atop an empire. But then suddenly the younger twin held a blade to the man's throat. The man was quite indifferent. What is the meaning of this, young queen? You are a trespasser in this house. Did you expect a warm welcome? As the elder twin spoke, the younger twin held her blade fast to the man's throat. She would kill the instant her sister gave the command. Surely you were aware of what you were getting into. You are a prophet, after all. Is that what you think we are? If you are something else, then do tell us. No, we shed our names long ago. Call us what you like. The prophet had confessed that he was not human, but the twin queens were unperturbed and stood steady. Twin Queens, if you know us, then you must know why we came. The prophet was suggesting that they comply with their wishes. The elder twin sighed in disappointment, with a mix of emotions. She felt pity, dismay, and anger. Raw anger. The prophets were spoken of in the Empire's secret histories. Now that she had met one, she was dismayed by the fact that these supposedly noble leaders of men were hardly noble at all. She was angry that they preached for a cessation of war without taking any action, and finally she felt pity that these defect creatures exhibited a mentality much like ordinary men. The twin queens were already skeptical of the prophets. Now they were certain the prophets were only threats to their vision, threats to their final goal. Refuse. Only through this war will true peace be achieved. Stability can be achieved in one other way. In no other way. And only we nobles can show the commoners the way to stability. Few prophets are the originators of these lofty ideals, then we have surely borrowed from you. But your ideals are outdated. We choose to follow our own path. This is our royal will. Then you've no intention to cease your warring to ensure peace for prosperity. That is correct. The heavenly mandate calls upon us for leadership. The queens believed that they had a mission, a purpose. It was this conviction that lent them their true strength, and it was this conviction that prevented the twin queens from ever consenting to the path suggested by the prophets. What's termination? Let us command our steadfastness. You are both befitting of your destinations. Distinctions. But I am afraid that we must destroy you. But why? Your actions will spread enmity across the land, and the baneful Malicious will visit you, ensuring the destruction of your humble world. If the Imperial Annals, the calamitous Malicious, was turned back by the Mad Queen, there is no concern. The conviction of the Twin Queens was their strength. They referred to the tale of the Mad Queen Alicia. Actually, it's I'm having trouble sticking with a particular pronunciation for that name. But the chapters they referred to were forbidden, accused in the eyes of the Empire. It would never be admitted that a queen of a foreign land, a mad queen at that, had long ago saved the Empire and the world. When conflict begets enmity, an unending cycle begins. To grant true protection to this world, the roots of conflict must be torn from their beds. Be they mad queens or twin queens, do you mean to say that peace can only be achieved with our death? The prophet did not answer the question directly, but only continued with the facts. Twin queens, you stand at a fateful crossroads. The path you choose is yours. But remember this, when you choose your future. And with those words, the thing known as a prophet faded into the darkness. With the prophet gone, the mansion was silent. The twins softly spoke their minds. Their convictions would not budge. The twin queens had already chosen their fate. We will destroy the calamity and the prophets. No one shall stand in our path. Dear sister, I know. We will resume expansion immediately. Yes, our wishes will be made true. And so they quickly resumed their offensive, certain that the prophets and this thing called the Malicious posed no compelling threat. Chapter 4. The Undead King. Once he was among the superior beings known as prophets, but he left them and chose a new life as an undead. When he was a prophet, the Undead King researched the Malicious and the numerical logic arts and gained the highest understanding of the world and its malicious blight. His conclusion, the prophets would never rid the world of the malicious, since their method would never rid humanity of its greed. How might he free ourselves from greed? The Undead King found the answer. Undead with no petty desires were worthy subjects that would help bring the world together. Undead do not start wars, nor do they harbor ill will. With no ill will, the malicious would not come into existence. But by transforming all people into undead, the world would finally enjoy lasting peace. An undead citizenry would solve the world's problems. Such was the conclusion of the Undead King's research. In the north lies the Pantheon City. Long ago, the city bustled with devotees and was the most prosperous locale in the north. But now the city was deserted, ravaged by war. One only saw the remains of a few once proud temples, but below the ground a great temple still remained. And the Pantheon City lived on. In a sense, upon its throne sits a great king. The room was dead, silent, an emptiness that warded off life itself. The undead king sat in his throne, relishing the void, knowing that he would soon be welcomed by an old companion. Well, look at you. A voice resonated within the void. A physical human form followed, materializing. It was a prophet, one of the undead king's former equals, but the king had parted ways with the prophets long ago, and now they were only threats to his grand vision. But the undead king was unmoved by the prophet's visit, and spoke with deathly calm. I was expecting you. What have you done to yourself? The prophet remembered the undead king as a superior being, a far cry from the gruesome creature that sat upon the throne now. The prophet could not help but grimace as he spoke. It was a shock to see the repugnant transformation of the king. The undead king responded with a deep, gravelly voice that resounded with newfound strength. He was lord of his domain. His mighty presence overwhelming the prophet was dubious of the source of this power. This suggests a mantle of cinders. But how could you? I mastered the art of which created the spirit vessel. And the mantle of cinders. Combined it with my own alchemy, and finally succeeded in creating this ultimate flesh. The prophet was speechless. The undead king had planned to face the prophet all along, and had now proved that the prophets could be defeated. His undead craft would wrench the prophets from their lofty position as far-away deities. You've come a long way. You must have a good reason, old friend. Indeed I do, undead king. No, old friend. Why don't you join us? Come back. Look at me. Don't you suppose that's too late? When we defeated the Malicious, we studied its remnants and reviewed the spirit vessel's memories. From this, we've gained insight into the very structure of the Malicious. With further examination, our research will one day give us the ability to control the very Malicious itself. But with our present resources, this will take far too long. You want me to examine your findings? Precisely. The results will allow for perfect control of the world. We shall rule over all together. The prophet revealed an unchecked consent. They believed that they were within reach of controlling the most fearsome force known to the universe. Hearing this, the undead king let out a low, gruffle laugh. He realized that the prophets would never change, that they would always avert their eyes from even a self-evident truths. Fools. The only thing that might control the Malicious is a god itself. Indeed, the Malicious may very well be a creation of God, put upon this earth to purify its evils. The Malicious is the very will of the world itself. We are not gods, and we shall have no dominion over such power. What are you saying? The prophets, always distant observers of the earth, could not comprehend the undead king's argument. It was a truth that was only evident to those who knew the world firsthand, those with direct and extended contact. The nature of the world was evident to the undead king, who had discarded his status as prophet, and meddled in earthly affairs with his own dirty hands. The undead king understood the Malicious more than any other. Don't you see? No, of course not. How could you? Let me ask again. What are you saying? No? What have you discovered? I am not like you. I have long been a part of this world. I have learned much. I have answered many questions. I know the truth about this bane called the Malicious. And now, I have an announcement for you. Your methods will never bring true peace to the world. Old friend, do you mock our goals? Deny our very existence? I do. The prophets will never change the world. A world of peace must be ruled by superior beings such as ourselves. There must be a ruler to rule, to shepherd. The prophets were internal observers of the world. The undead king had developed an opposite view of stewardship. Superior beings must meddle in human affairs, influence the world. After all this time, this was the conclusion of the undead king. You are mistaken. Subjection of humans begets enmity, quickening the coming of the Malicious. There is no peace in such a world. How could you not comprehend such an elementary idea? To the prophets, it was common knowledge that the accumulation of temper led to the coming of the Malicious. It was the Malicious that they feared, and so they employed spirit vessels to smother the seeds of war. The prophets were certain that this would further their aims. But the undead king had heard it all before, and smiled wryly. What you say is true, if your subjects are human, but if they are dispassionate undead, this is no matter. Without greed, there is no war. Without war, no hatred. Without hatred, there can be no Malicious. The prophet seemed to wince at the undead king's words. Seeing the prophet's reaction, the undead king cracked a diabolical, satisfied smile. You're going to turn every last human into a living corpse? Indeed. Lifeless, carefree, beautiful creatures. Excellent followers. So that I may mold the world as you never could, creating a world of true peace. This was how the undead king envisioned the world. It would be a world of peace, as the prophets had hoped, but it would be a static world, devoid of progress, of evolution. The prophet, not as sure as before, nevertheless continued to argue. We will never allow such drastic measures. Besides, our mission is to watch over the world until its end, and so we wish for a world of peace, molded by the humans of their own accord. We have no use for a world of peace if it is inhabited by mindless, lifeless creatures of the undead. We have nothing in common. I am not on a mission. The end of the world does not concern me. I am here to save the world, in the truest sense, that is all. And to this end you will wage war? Is that not contradiction? This war is a terrifying matter. This war is a trifling matter. Before a greater good, and if this would be the last war, all the better. Besides, if this minuscule conflict is enough to awaken the Malicious, surely your little vessel can clean up the mess. The undead king was mocking the prophet, challenging him to demonstrate their arrogant claims. We have heard enough. It was a final farewell. The undead king knew that he was nothing but an enemy to the prophets now. But now then, we will create a vessel and destroy you, that is all. The prophets had declared war on the undead king, but the undead king only looked upon the prophet with pity. You know, don't you, that your methods will never, ever achieve your true aims. Nonsense. I sense a timidity as you speak of your conviction. Perhaps they are not convictions after all. He had twisted the dagger, challenging their reason, detour, and cursed their intelligence. The day will come. You will be engulfed in despair, and there will only be one escape. We bid farewell forever, old friend. No, undead king. The prophet had cut the king short with a farewell, and disappeared as if to flee from the undead king's presence. Nothing can stop me, not even the Malicious. And with those words, the undead minions began to writhe, as if under the control of their great master. They would be ready for the coming vessel. Well, this has been the backstory for the second story, Rebirth. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And I do apologize for any mispronunciations I may have done. Well, until the next adventure in the Malicious Fallen. See you guys.